All right, coming in at number 17 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings from HC Pilsen. It's Adam Jiricek, who unfortunately suffered a year-end torn ACL at the World Juniors in the very first game, but he's been a promising prospect for 3 or 4 years now. He's been on scouts' radars.
And Ross, not to be confused with David Jiricek. However, there are a lot of comparables. EP in their draft guide, they do shades of players. And wouldn't you know it, shades of Adam Jiricek can be found through David Jiricek. So they find these two prospects, these two brothers, very similar. And when you start doing the research, you can see why they've said that. Now, both of them, right-hand shot defensemen, good size, from Czechia, obviously. And it's very unfortunate that Adam had the year he did. A lot of injury concerns. In 19 games in Czechia, he had no goals, 1 assist, so he didn't get a lot of time to showcase his skills. Ross, you mentioned the knee injuries. He also had a concussion in November. So it's really tough to look at a guy with the potential and the name cachet of Adam Jiricek without being able to look at a strong sample size in his draft year.
Even if you go back, like last year, he was able to play almost a full season, I'd imagine, 41 games, and he had 29 points against the U20 level, and that was as a 16-year-old. So he's obviously a top-end talent for Czechia. I wish, obviously, for these types of players, the more sample size, the better against their own age groups. I find it's a little bit unfair to have them going up against men when this guy doesn't turn 18 until June. Like, he's turning 18 this month as we record this. So I think he's a very raw prospect. And from that standpoint as well, I think there's going to be a long project to get him to his potential, but you can see it, his hockey sense, the way he jumps into the rush offensively, his shutdown ability defensively, using his body, using pivots to keep one-on-one attackers to the outside. He does everything to keep the puck away from the home plate area. I just think he needs to work on his skating a lot. It's a glaring weakness for him, but it's also probably a lot more coachable than a hockey sense issue or making mistakes over and over again. I think that NHL teams are going to be higher on Adam Jiricek than the public sphere. I think that he's the type of guy. I mean, our rankings show that too. Bob McKenzie, 14. Corey Pronman, who's more of an NHL executive ask around type guy, he's got 15. Chris Peters has him at 16. And then Scott Wheeler's down at 22. Button and McKean's at 24. Elite prospects all the way down at 28. No surprise after I mentioned skating is what he needs to work on the most. But he's a June birthday, and he has a lot of room to grow. He's 6'2", but he weighed in at 167 pounds. So you're contrasting that with David Jiricek, who's the 6th overall pick from Columbus just 2 years ago. And David Jiricek is 210 pounds. So is he going to follow in his brother's footsteps? Can he play at the NHL level at 210, 205? That would make a huge difference because he loves being physical, Pilsy. But when you're 167 and you've got a power forward, let's say Brady Tkachuk, for example, barreling down on you and you have to make a decision, you have to be able to stand your ground and not get pushed around. So a long-term play for a team who's looking for Adam Jiricek.
Yeah, and certainly Ross, a lot of scouts love his physicality. EP, that was kind of the one thing they really zeroed in on for positives for Adam Jiricek was his physical play. But like you mentioned, when you're in the 160s, it's going to be hard to be physically imposing up against other men. Now, David St. Louis from EP, he did a Let's Watch segment. I implore everyone to go check those out whenever David St. Louis does them. I love watching them. And he shows a lot of risky decisions at the blue line with his pinches. Now, half the time they work out and they create great scoring opportunities, but the other half of the time they create turnovers and breakaways and odd man rushes for the other team. So you got to decide, do you think his decision-making is going to come around and he's going to be able to better calculate when the right times to make those pinches are? Quite possibly, yes. Also, possibly no. When it's bigger competition, that's going to be able to sniff those out and watching video and able to kind of attack him on those. Now, he also tries to force his shot from the point too much, which I'm going to say is a neutral attribute, Ross. I like defensemen that are confident in the shot from the point. However, you got to pick your spots. You can't be throwing a muffin up the ice when there's two guys right directly in your shot lane, and that creates turnovers and gets the puck out of the offensive zone on your own team. You don't want that. You mentioned how EP is the lowest on him. They always look at the skating. Well, his skating isn't below average, Ross. I would say it's below average. It's a legitimate issue. Even one of their scouts, Daniel G, this is the exact quote on his skating. His stride is next level ugly. That's not great, Ross. So we're talking about a young, raw defenseman with bad knees that's a bad skater. If I'm an NHL scout looking at a long-term player, a defenseman that's a bad skater with bad knees, that's a huge red flag for me, unfortunately.
So where are you on the range from 14 to 28 where our scouts have them?
Just scrolling down to my rankings here. So I've got Adam Jiricek 22 in my rankings right now. Now, keep in mind, that's only a ranking up to what we've ranked so far, but I think that's the range I'm going to have him in, Ross. I kind of, right around where I've got Henry Muse. And then there's a big stretch of forwards for me. So he's still in that mid first round range of forwards for me. But I just think I've got in my notes here, I think he's going to go to a team that already has a blue chip number 1 D prospect, and then they can afford to work with him and have him come along a little bit later. I don't think you're going to see a team with weak prospect pipeline that doesn't already have a number 1 guy say, this is our number 1 guy, and he's going to be a top 4 NHLer guaranteed for us in the future.
I keep hearing like San Jose kind of makes sense, right?
Yep.
14, where they already have some guys on not only the back end, but also up front. And it's like, hey, they have so many picks too that you can take a bit of a swing, because if he hits, if he's able to fill out and improve his skating, you have the makings of a top 4 mobile defenseman who's going to put up way more than obviously 1 point in 19 games. You look at his stats on the screen right now from last year, but there is much more offensive upside than what he's shown there.
Yeah, I think so. And like we mentioned, he's a young kid playing in a men's league trying to create offense. It's not easy, especially at undersized weight-wise. It's not going to be easy for him. I gave him three stars, Ross, just because he's not the guy I'm pushing all my chips in if I'm the Sens, and I don't believe he's going to be in the Sens range. Like he's not a top 10 guy, and he's not late part of the first round guy either. So it's not a guy that makes sense for the Sens. However, if you're a team that just drafted him, give him time, give him space, don't put too much pressure on him. And I do think this is a player that's going to turn things around.
Do you want him to come over to the AHL right away, or do you think him kind of cementing that he can face that competition in the men's league in Czechia, is that more important for at least a full season without injury, hopefully?
I kind of got the impression, Ross, that a lot of scouts thought he was brought to the men's league in Czechia too early. I would like to see him, especially with the injuries, I'd like to see him spend a little bit more time amongst his peers and getting that confidence up before going to an AHL or even Czechia again. I don't know, like for some reason, Ross, I know this would never happen, but something along the lines like an Allsvenskan league, right? Where it's not just kids running around out there, but it's not a full style pro league. Something like that would be nice to see where he's at competition wise.
He's always played above his age group, though. As a 15-year-old, he played under 17 and so on and so forth. Like he's always been counted upon to play tough minutes against the hardest competition. So I think there's a prospect we did recently where we're like, oh, we wish we had seen him against tougher competition. So it just shows you how hard scouting is, because at this point, it's almost like we're of the other mind where it's like we actually would like to have seen him more against his age group and also to stay healthy. But Adam Jiricek, with an average ranking of 20.4, comes in at number 17 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings.